You're listening to Be Happy. Be inspired by great interviews, great music, and news of inspirational events.
This is Be Happy, Be Inspired. This podcast, well, all about helping people make a positive change. And it's always great to talk to people who've got new books out. And joining me on the line this afternoon is Anne Burton. Now, Anne's got a book out. It's called Being Human. What a lovely title. Anne, we're going to talk about your book in a minute, but how did it all come about anyway in the first place?
That's quite a long story, I suppose. The book, it's Being Human, a user guide. It's intended to be the first of a series under the banner of Being Human. It's a bringing together of some of the things I've learned over the last 10 years that seem to come up as themes over and over and over again. So whatever I've been looking into, whatever style of writing or, other podcasts or videos or courses that I've been on, these things just seem to keep popping up. And so it just seemed to me that they were important, just important aspects of who we are and why we do what we do.
And what kind of things keep popping up, Anne?
Well, things like communication. We can't not communicate. It's one of those strange things that we do it all the time. We're not often very conscious of what we are communicating, and we can't not do it. So it's like, even if you're not there, you're sort of saying something in your absence anyway.
I like that. Yeah, good one.
Yeah. So and connection's a really big one. Been reading a lot around the work of people like Johann Hari, who has looked into the connection between connection, or the lack of connection, and addictions and compulsions.
Right.
And it seems that whilst, I can't remember who it was that said that, the internet has connected the planet and disconnected the humans. So, we seem to have more ways of communicating, but are more isolated than ever. It's that sort of thing.
God, fascinating subject. I love the bit, where you cannot not communicate. Just a raise of the eyebrow, and you maybe not know you're doing it, eh?
Absolutely. And it's not just what we communicate to other people, we're communicating to ourselves as well.
So is this a bit about our self-talk as well, Anne, then?
It's self-talk, and it's also in how we stand, how we hold ourselves. It doesn't just communicate to the world how we're feeling. It acts like a feedback loop. So, if you're standing in a sort of a powerless way, you're actually telling yourself that that's how you're feeling and reinforcing that feeling.
Well, that's really interesting, because I was talking to my wife, who just popped out to South Africa yesterday,
as you do,
as you do, to go on a retreat, and she was doing some work, and she just mentioned how somebody in the group, who at times seems very confident, but then suddenly became, her words were, small in the group.
Yeah, and that's it. That's exactly it. Because if you look in nature. You look like, I don't know, silverback gorillas. They stand big. They take up space. So if you're feeling confident, then you tend to be in a big position. You take up space. You've seen it in the classroom, where you'll get the kid whose arms straight up in the air with the answer, and then you'll get a kid at the back somewhere who's barely raising a finger. And that doesn't just show the world that one kid is feeling confident and one kid isn't. It's actually feeding that back to themselves. So ironically, if you stand confidently, it will actually generate confidence as well as display it.
Wow. Yeah. So does this book talk you through a number of things then, Anne?
Yeah, it's basically there's 6 aspects to it, all beginning with a C. So we have consciousness, communication, connection, courage, creativity, and compassion.
Right, okay.
What I'm suggesting is that these things are like, in computer terminology, they're like our operating system. So you can put as many apps or programs or bits of hardware around the edges, but if your Windows or your iOS isn't working well, then what you try to add on top of it won't be. And the reason I've sort of looked at it like this is I've noticed in the sort of coaching and personal development field, there are some sort of trends coming through. It's not across the board, but some sort of trends coming through where it seems to be, if you've set a goal and achieved a goal, the next one's got to be bigger and tougher and more of a challenge. And it just starts to feel like something else to beat ourselves up about.
That's just like being on a constant treadmill, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's often said, it's not about. Well, I think I'm right in saying that it's not always about the goal; it's about the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, goals are great, and it is important that we have them. But the most important thing about them is that there's something that we're excited by, and that we're taking some sort of action. It's not about what's next, because that's what gets us into a stress position in the first place. So this is just about, let's go back to basics. Let's look at what's important for being a human being, and then do whatever you like with it. This is not me saying this is how you should live your life. This is what you should do with your life, because I don't know what people should do with their lives. They know what they should do. So that's not what it's about. It's just saying, just pay attention to these few things, get your operating system set up, and then you can run as many applications as you like in your life.
And it sounds a bit like finding your sort of true meaning and purpose a bit. Does that fit well?
Yeah, yes, it is. I talk about compassion in the book, and it's as much about cutting ourselves some slack and other people, as well as sort of getting back to who we actually are, rather than who we think we are, because we are sort of unconsciously programmed as we grow up by the fact that everybody else has learned in the same way, and we're sort of unconsciously programmed to believe that we need to behave in a certain way and do certain things in order to be acceptable. And this is about, getting back to basics and treading softly.
And what about the first one you mentioned? Was it consciousness? Did you mention?
Yeah. I don't go too deep into it. It's really about the fact that we have this massive, incredible brain that can do some incredible things, and yet only about 5% of what's going on in there is actually conscious processing. The rest of it goes on under the waterline, as it were. Now, that's really, really useful for us, because once we've learned what a chair is, for example, we don't need to go and relearn it every time we meet a chair. So it's really useful. We can shortcut stuff. And unfortunately, it does the same with things that we grow to believe. So if we develop a negative belief about ourselves, that can sit in our minds at an unconscious level, and we just carry on running that program. So what I talk about is how your brain processes information, how beliefs become what we regard as reality.
Yeah.
And how that by bringing things back into our conscious awareness, we can decide whether we want to carry on believing them or not.
Get that entirely. I used to have a pattern that I used to, at some point in my life, I used to sabotage my own success for some reason.
Very common.
Yeah, when I understood why, yeah, fine. I got there. And I loved your analogy earlier about the computer, because it was only, I was smiling when you said that. Because yesterday I was doing some work for a radio program that I work on, and one of the computers I used, and got all the gear on, like you said, it's got all the apps, it's got everything you need, but the battery died.
Yeah. If the basics aren't in place, then you really are going to struggle with, like say, adding anything fancy on. And this is exactly it when you were saying about self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. People try and run a program in their mind to achieve a goal or get somewhere, but underneath that, if there's a bit of the basic programming running that says you can't do this, or you're not good enough, or this isn't for you, then, you know, you can try and try and try as hard as you might, and somehow you'll manage to fix it so that it doesn't work. So it's about getting back to that level and saying, what do I believe? Does it still stack up? Does it help me? And, you know, if it doesn't, well, let's believe something else.
Yeah, let's change those beliefs as beliefs change over time, if you want to change them, I guess.
Absolutely.
And how does this fit in? How does the book fit in with the work that you do on a daily basis then?
Well, like I said, the book is based on the things that I learned in the process of moving from, well, because I didn't always used to be in training and coaching. I used to be an accountant.
Okay.
Please don't hold that against me. And I used to work in industry in a lot of change projects, so putting new computer systems in, restructures, reorganisations, that kind of thing. And wherever you find change, you find people freaking out, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Our brains aren't designed to handle change well. And in a business setting particularly, you say change, people hear redundancy. You know, or you know, significant loss of whatever they've got going on at the moment. So that's where I started looking into this sort of work, just to try and understand why people were freaking out quite so much around change. And I wanted to put the book together because I found sometimes when I'm coming to work with somebody for the first time, or coming to do some training, these sort of fundamental, these basics aren't actually in people's awareness, generally speaking. And so I just wanted to bring something out there. It's not a huge book, you know, it's not like War and Peace. It's not going to take you months to read it, but just that gives a little bit of insight into why we do what we do and why our thoughts function as they do.
You know, and I think I think it's a great thing to do, to get people to actually step out for a moment and just actually reflect about that, why we do the things that we do. You know, all those habits that we've got. Though we've got habits that support us, but we've got habits that don't really support us. And at times we still crack on and do them. You know, I just got to share this with. I had a situation where I know that coffee really doesn't agree with me. I know that. But I have this habit where I still go and drink the damn stuff. You know, it's like, how can I break this habit? And I've managed to do it, but it was becoming aware of that and then making some steps to change it.
That's it. It's because we do so much on autopilot. Like I say, it's about 5% of the processes that we're running are conscious.
Yeah.
And a lot of those though aren't even stuff that's useful, because even though we exist in now, we sort of experience our life as one long continuous now.
Mm-hmm.
And still we spend much of our conscious brain capacity worrying about things in the past that we can't do anything about, and worrying about things in the future that haven't even happened yet. So the proportion that we've got left to actually think about what we're doing and whether we're going to drink the coffee or not, and whether we're going to believe that we can achieve the goal or not, is absolutely tiny. So we sort of run on autopilot a lot of the time.
God, and it's great, as I say, the work that you do. It's great to help people just step back from that a moment and just do that reflection and ask themselves the question. And just, you know, it's a great question. Is, you know, are you going in the direction that you want to go in? And I suppose the first question is, well, what direction am I going in?
Yeah.
So Anne, so just tell us the title of the book again, and how can people get hold of a copy and find out more about you?
Sure. The book's called Being Human, a User Guide. It's on Amazon as a book and as on Kindle. So if people have got Kindle, they can download it. There's also a website, which is being-human.today. Facebook page, Being Human Today.
Being Human Today, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, people can sort of jump on social media and have a look at that. And that's probably the best way to get in touch with me if they're interested in finding out more.
On Facebook?
On Facebook or on the website.
Okay, brilliant. Well, look, we wish you well with the book.
Thank you very much.
Keep in touch as well, because this podcast, as I say, it's all about inspiration, and I'd love to talk to you again, actually, and explore other things and other areas that you do, because it's all about helping people make a positive difference.
That'd be great. Always up for a chat.
Well, thank you. And whatever you're doing over the weekend, and have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on Be Happy, Be Inspired.
Thank you very much.
Be Happy, Be Inspired is a weekly podcast. For more information about Steve Twynham and how to join the growing number of listeners, visit stevetwynham.com. Be Happy, Be Inspired is produced and presented by Steve Twynham. Copyright applies.